Welcome to the Open House Podcast where women talk real estate. I'm Steph Douglas.
And I'm Kristina Moderis. Hello.
Hello. How's it going?
Good. I feel like we have a lot of things going on.
So many things going on. We had a workshop last night, and
yes, how did that go? Tell us.
It was so good. It's just so nice to be in a room full of people who are curious about buying a house and excited but nervous, but but when they first get there, they're overwhelmed, it was like the perfect. Everybody goes around and introduces themselves, and every person said something different, and it was like, there's not enough information online. Like, where there is information, it's not specific to me. I was like, yes.
And this is for our first time home. Every month our agents, our realtors, host a first time home buyer workshop. And recently, we hadn't been. Me and Steph used to do them ourselves, and back in the day when we first started our company. And now our agents, we have 4 realtors. I'm realizing when I say agents, sometimes people don't know what that means. Like even my friend yesterday, I was saying agents, and she was like, "Is that different than a realtor?" And I was like, "Oh, yes, our realtors."
Yeah.
Yes. Our realtors teach this workshop every month to first-time home buyers. And Steph went yesterday just to see how it's been going. We haven't been to one in a while. And
yeah, we have a small space, right? We had a small space, which we'll get into. And yeah, it was really great. And they're just so knowledgeable. They work with people every single day in this market. It's changing every day. And that's not specific to this time. Like, it always changes every day. So they're the market and just like the climate and people's opinions, what people are doing. And so their experience is just like invaluable, and it's really apparent in those workshops. So it was really fun. And we had a bunch of people who are like trying to buy by the end of the year, which is like the perfect timing if you're trying to buy in this year for them to come start getting the research portion done. And those people can definitely be in houses by the end of the year.
Yeah, I totally. And this is a great first start. So typically it's 2 of our realtors on our team who will teach this. It's like about 45 minutes an hour. And there's usually, it's a small group of people. So it's like 10 to 15 people. And it's just a really good way to just listen, learn, but also ask your like kind of personal questions. And then you can kind of learn like which agent you're kind of vibing with to maybe, book a more personal call to ask very detailed one-on-one questions, to know like if you should start that process now or later or whatever.
Yeah. And it's such a casual, like homey atmosphere where it makes everyone feel really comfortable. It's kind of conversational. Like, you can ask your questions during the presentation. It just like really makes people, what I noticed last night, it just, everybody felt really comfortable. Like they were in someone's home, and like it was really nice to hear people be kind of vulnerable, and like everybody was learning from other people's questions. Like, they didn't realize they had those questions. And so it's a really good place to start.
Yeah, I totally. And I like the atmosphere as well. Like, we pride ourselves on having like a very kind of informal atmosphere in whatever event we're doing. Just because it's like, I don't know, real estate can have that image of being stuffy or like overwhelming. So, we office out of a house, and actually this week we have a lot going on because we are moving out of our old office. And yeah, so we were only there for a year. But we've been selling off furniture. Everyone's had kind of brought in pieces of furniture or plants or whatever. Everyone's taking their stuff back. And we found a new, so Steph and I have been looking for an office space that will really fit our growing business and like all of our events. And we found the cutest spot that I'm so excited to share with y'all. We hired a really cool designer who some of y'all may follow on social media. She is young. She is doing a million things. She's so creative. And so if you guys follow along on TikTok, we're going to really be sharing all the details of that project. And I'm so excited.
Yeah, I cannot wait. And really we planned on just like kind of keeping in that office for a little longer, and we just didn't have the space. So it was like a natural next step, and yeah, it's really exciting. It's our first commercial lease as well. So
Yes.
lots to
Yeah.
learn.
Never rented a commercial lease, never renovated one, like
Yeah,
obviously. So we'll share that whole process, how it's been going and everything. Um,
yeah. Stay
Probably on
tuned.
here too, but a lot on TikTok as well. So
Yeah. You
uh,
got to see the visuals because it's going to be a pretty big transformation.
mhm,
So yeah,
yeah.
keep tuned. Stay tuned.
Keep
I'm
tuned.
also yeah, keep tuned. That's what you say.
Like it.
Um, I'm also doing some projects on the side, and I realized yesterday. We were talking the other day about how busy we've been. We've been so busy, and I realized I've just taken on like 4 different projects, and so luckily it's not long term, like this one of these projects is about to wrap up, and then the other one is kind of like is going to be a little bit more passive soon. So it was just like a lot of starting something like in the same 2 weeks. So yeah, we're turning a container, like a shipping container, into a little long-term rental. And then we're also me and my family business that I've talked about on here, my mom, my uncle, we have a business where we buy old houses and we renovate them. And usually hold on to them and rent them out. And we're working on transitioning everything to long term, which is uh, this is what we're going to be talking about on this podcast today, being a landlord. But these 2 projects are exciting because they're kind of different. Like I've never worked with a shipping container. I've always loved that idea. It's super sustainable. It's like there's so many shipping containers out in the world, just like in landfills. And so having that turn into something where you can live in is cool. And then we bought a house actually like really close to our old office that yeah, that has been sitting there. I mean we've driven by it almost every day, and it's just been needing some love. So yeah.
Yeah, and we have some friends who live on that street, and you told them that this weekend, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, like I've been wanting this like has kind of been abandoned for a while, and we were wondering about it, and so excited someone's going to like make it, nice again and a nice
Yeah.
like home someone actually can live in because no right now it's really not. I don't know. I don't think anyone can live in
Mm-mm.
those. Yeah.
No, you can't live there, and it's been vacant for a really long time. And so it's exciting. And I think normally someone would tear it down, but we're going to renovate. So I like keeping the charm, keeping the consistency of the neighborhood, which is kind of is what our friends did too to their house. They like didn't tear it down. They renovated, which is I love it. It's cool.
Mhm. Mhm. It's
What
very
about
cute.
you? What's happening to your homes?
Um, so the house that I used to live in that I had Airbnb'd, I'll call it the 13th Street house. So things have been moving quickly. I decided like I think like 3 weeks ago that I was like no longer going to Airbnb it. Someone had broken in and we were like, this is just not making enough money. It's a disaster. This is my goal was always to just short term rent it for a year to make enough money to kind of have in my account for when I long term rented it, but didn't turn out that way. Wasn't making even hitting the mortgage. So or covering the mortgage payment. So the minute I like essentially didn't even announce it anywhere except for I told Eric, my boyfriend, that I was like, okay, we're long term renting this house. He talked to one person who knew some a couple who wanted to move in, so and we know them as well, so they it's been very quick transition because we still have Airbnb guests who are staying this weekend and I didn't want to cancel on them. Just I'm like, that sucks to like have a planned vacation and then someone last minute cancels on you. So um they're still trying to move in by June 1st, which I don't know when this is being released, but June 1st. Today is the 25th of May. We're leaving town this weekend, so essentially what this couple has done for us is they like suggested this. I was like, "Are you sure?" But they have swapped their furniture with our furniture so they can slowly start moving in, and then the Airbnb guests still have like furniture in there, and then they're going to sell our furniture because I was like, I don't know if I can like swing this date, like this June 1st date. Like I could, I'm going to be out of town. Da, da. And they were like, well, how about we do this? Like, and I was like, if you want. And so I'm giving them 30% of what they sell. And yeah, so they were essentially removing a lot of our furniture for us, selling it, swapping it. And then me and Eric will get back on the 31st, that Wednesday, and we'll remove everything else and they move in the next day.
That's amazing. I
Yeah.
love that. Renting to people you know is like could be tricky, but it sounds like it's going really well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's gone so far. Like they signed the lease, we got everything going. So, and it's going to be covering my mortgage. So my mortgage is, how much is my mortgage? Oh, like 2000 or something like that a month. And then I'm renting it to them for 2200, and they're going to get obviously giving me a deposit, and they're paying electricity, all those bills. They're maintaining the lawn because before I had to pay for all that, and it wasn't, yeah, it just wasn't enough. So this
That's like a true win-win.
yeah.
They're covering your whole mortgage, they're covering the utilities. That's a really good deal for the area for
Yes,
them.
and um they're also really handy, and also, as you can see, like scrappy. So they already have plans of like doing projects here and there, and but very clear on like, if you want to do that, that's okay. If there's something that needs to be fixed, let me know so I can pay you, like being very clear so there's no resentment either way. But and they were telling me about how their landlord is kind of not treating them really well in this process, and they feel kind of, they had felt pretty trapped. So yeah, that's the topic we're going to get into today is landlords. Because I think a lot of people don't think highly of landlords.
How common is it for people to complain about their landlords? It's so I hear it so often from renters.
Yeah, and luckily, like, or maybe I don't know. I haven't had a bad landlord experience myself. Like when I moved to Austin, well, I guess I didn't know. Like I lived in 3 rentals before I bought a house in Austin, and the first one, just like a standard apartment that was fine. The second one was a 5-bedroom house, which honestly, I never interacted with the landlord. It was like a big management company, but the house was not like it was bad. The house was like almost just like really old, dilapidated. Like they tore it down when we moved out. Um, but I just didn't know what I didn't know. I was like, whatever, this is fine. We'll like, our electricity bill is $500 a month. We'll just like Airbnb our
Airbnb.
couches in our back room and like make some money that way. Like it, and the only, and then the other landlord, she was so nice. She, like, I lived in this little like hobbit house, like hobbit, like basement apartment across from like the flagship Whole Foods downtown. She was like, had been on city council and was like really sweet and like trying to give affordable housing to people. I mean, it was old and stuff, but like she was really like nice and kind to us. So I never had like did you ever have a bad landlord experience?
Well, I had a landlord. I mean, it's been 10 years, but we had a man who lived in our back. Like he owned a front house and a back house, like actually on Ninth Street, really close to where we are now. And he lived in the back house with his wife, and he rented the front house out. And we were college kids. Like he rented it to college kids, and we thought he was the worst person ever. He was so rude, all of that. But looking back, I mean, yeah, we didn't know how, like, when you're a renter, sometimes you just don't really know how to, especially when you're in college and especially when you're, partying and stuff. You just don't know how to take care of a house. And so, like, he was right in like kind of being strict and staunch with us. It ended up him being like, okay, we're not re-signing your lease. And we were like, no, but that's when I bought my first house. So it was a blessing in disguise.
Perfect. Okay. So essentially, maybe there's like a misunderstanding between these two
Yeah.
parties typically. Um, I, and also like, I feel like sometimes small time landlords can be like, except like kind of eccentric and like
Yeah.
just, I don't know. Maybe
It's
they haven't done all their research of like they didn't save enough money. Like you have to assume, I think a lot of people assume that like landlords are smarter or like they're smart. They like know what to do with their money, but like they're not always. They're just people and some of them
yes.
bought just like some of them might be like super organized and like financially savvy, but like some just like decided to rent their house out and they don't know like I don't know, they don't know how much their mortgage went up or like then they
Yeah.
find out and then they get panicked and then they take it out on you. It's like
Yeah. And it's they just own a house. It doesn't mean that they have tons of reserves like you said. And so it's like it can be stressful. This is their investment. If they feel like it's being treated poorly, they can be mean or rude or,
they
strict.
cannot treat
And
it like a business, right?
right, right, right. And then when it comes to like big management companies, a lot of times things slip through the cracks and you're not getting things repaired when you need them repaired. And so there's like, it ranges from the small time landlord that doesn't have much in reserves and can't fix the thing that you need fixed. And the other, side of it is the corporate, you know, things just aren't priority for them. So that's frustrating as well. Um, I wouldn't I would never want to deal with a landlord again. I love the freedom that it comes with owning my own house. But I do think that there's a lot is like a big push to hate landlords and like everything they have to do with, you know, like earning money from a basic need, which I do understand. Like we get that side of it.
Right. Yeah, I guess are you referring to maybe like I think a lot of things that we can see on maybe like social media uh on TikTok there is a lot of hate for landlords and I think there it's like a twofold thing where sometimes like it is a lot of young people who might not understand um that whole process and like who what the actual issue is with affordable housing, what the actual issue is with um yeah, like the corrupt side of real estate. And I don't yeah, and I mean there are corrupt landlords, but a lot of times when it comes to affordable housing and like who's kind of hoarding all that is like big companies. They have in their portfolios they have hundreds of properties and they're the ones who kind of are occupying all those properties and like controlling it, not the like one-off person who has like 2 to 5 rental properties. They can be the problem, but they are not just because they own 2 to 5 properties that doesn't make them the problem with affordable housing and
Right. The problem with landlords, like it's very nebulous. It's very like in the clouds a little bit where you're like, well, I don't like the idea of people giving, earning money from someone living in my house. And okay, fine. But when you pull back a little bit and you're like, okay, well, people need to rent. It's not everyone can own a home at all times. That's people need to rent before they can buy, but people need to rent. Sometimes people prefer to rent.
right, you don't
Maybe
have
they're
to buy.
right. Maybe they're moving soon, like they're in a city for a temporary amount of time. It's just like rental is a necessity. And so landlords need to exist. And to me, having landlordship, and again, I think we need to get a different term for that. I think that having that spread out amongst normal people like us is the answer. Like getting these rentals out of the hands of these big, huge companies is a better alternative than just saying landlords suck. I never want to be one. And they're the problem with.
Yeah, that's like an easy just a easy or a cheap shot, I guess. Cause like it's so easy to like attack the people that are on, like those one-off people, us as well, like who are just like, look, this is how I'm doing this thing. It's easy for them to attack us because we're trying to show people how we're doing it. but like, are those big corporations they're not getting on TikTok being like, today I bought 500 properties and here's how. It's like, that's they're that would be, obviously people would attack that, but like, they're not going on there posting about that kind of stuff. And then like the one-off person who's like, I bought a house last year and or 5 years ago and now I'm renting it out and have two homes. It's like, and then you get comments like, you're the problem, like you're the, and it's just, I mean, yeah, it's easy for troll like comments to pop up, but it is coming from a real fear and like, but it's just a misunderstanding of like what the actual problem is.
I totally agree, and luckily, we're past that bothering us, but it is interesting to talk through and to really figure out, like, get down to the bottom of it, because I also think that that type of mentality, which is shared by a lot of people in a certain age range, um, is dangerous and damaging to their own wealth and to the spreading of wealth in general, because right now with the idea of like landlords are awful, like you shouldn't be participating, then that's really good narrative for these big companies to just take everything.
Right. And it's easy when you're scared to dismiss something or like yeah, if you're like, I could never do that anyway, I'm gonna hate it.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do is show that like there are different ways that you can get into a house. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to live in your first house. You know, you can have a vacation home, you can buy with a bunch of friends, you can have a community. Like there's so many different ways, and it's not like buy a house, I'm trapped here now, like I have to be older, I have to be married. No, like there's so many different ways to do it. And you also don't have to do it. Like you can, I think if you're like really not into it, then don't do it. But like, how do you know you're not? How do you know you're not into it if you've never done
I
it?
know. And if you're
Yeah,
really not into it and you hate landlords so much, it makes sense to not give landlords your money. It just makes
right,
sense. So
right,
it's like no matter what, you're participating. And like really, not even no matter what, like if you really don't want to participate in this like landlord exchange of money for housing, then you buy a house. And if you can't do it alone, you buy it with your friends. Like you each own a portion. And so no one's renting from anyone. Um, and so I feel like there is a way to, if you really, really want to remove yourself from it. But to me, getting this wealth and this land ownership into the hands of the people who really should have it, which is, you know, the people that are the 99%, I just feel like that's our mission. And it is super easy for people to be like, oh, well, that's really bad of you guys. And, you know, we're here, we're going to bear the cross because we want this information out there.
yeah, yeah, and there, and like I will say that like I I think we can understand why landlords get a bad rep, right? Like they aren't, a lot of them are small one-off people that like us. I mean, if you're not living in like a big condo, like also who's owning these condos? Like
Yes,
anyway,
exactly.
but like or the like apartment buildings, like who's owning all those?
Yes.
Go after them.
Yes,
But
there's no hate to those landlords, quote unquote.
right, right. But well, it's easy. Yeah, again, they're not posting online being like, I
Right.
own this apartment building. Landlords, the one-off people do like they don't always treat this like a business. They don't. And like I think that's why they get a bad rep, is because they're not like, they just got it. They just like fell into this. They didn't like treat it like a business. And if you are a landlord, you are a business owner, and you need to like treat, and your tenants need to be like your customers, and you need to, you know, treat them right. You can't just assume that, you can't just be like, you are essentially like can do whatever I say. Like you have to do whatever I say now. And that's exactly how the tenants, that my new tenants, that's how they felt with their old landlord. So their old landlord owns a house. It's an older house in it's in South Austin Central, like zip code 78704, Travis Heights area. And I think they had been renting from her for years, like many, many, many years, like I think 5 or something like that. And when they started renting from her, they were like, you know, we're handy. Like he so one of, I guess the guy, he's a handy person. And he was like, so if anything is needed, like I can help, whatever. And she kind of took advantage of that, where now that they're moving out, she's like, hey, do this, like go on the roof, fix this. Like and like, and they feel trapped, right? Because they had a lease, um, and this house is only one bedroom. So they wanted to break their lease, and they talked to her, and she was like, okay, if you find a tenant, or if I find a tenant, that can work. And so they kind of feel trapped, right? Like she was like, do all these, like fix this, fix
Yeah.
that. And they were like, well, if I feel like if I say I need to be paid, or like I can't do this, she might
Keep
not
the deposit.
not let us break this lease, and we really
Oh,
are
yes.
counting on that. And like they also, that's a good point, keeping their security deposit. So
Yeah.
it's, especially in Texas, like landlords have a lot of power,
Yeah.
and it just, you shouldn't wield that power for bad. Like
Yeah.
they're people too.
There's a power dynamic that is a little unfair, and like it really does mean that the landlords need to be responsible with that power, and really be fair and be kind, and treat it like a business. It's not emotional. This is, here's the lease. We're not taking advantage of anyone. All of those things are important for landlords to keep in mind, and it's really common for landlords to just get a little power hungry. So that's another reason why we need more decent landlords like y'all listening. Because it's so important to be an ethical landlord. You do have so much power, especially here in Texas.
Yeah. Okay, I'll give you examples of how I plan. Okay, just in this beginning process, how I'm trying to be an ethical landlord. Like, obviously, you need a written agreement. That should be a standard thing. And I think when they reached out to me, they were like, are we gonna have, like, can we have a written agreement even though we know each other? I was like, oh, of course. Like, you can see
Yes.
how they've been treated in the past. Like, that you can tell, and they're so communicative. Like, they're actually treating this like a business transaction. And so I'm assuming that they've just been burned by this lady in the past, that they're really like, I think they know how to be good tenants now. They've
Yeah.
been very communicative. I told them, so I gave them options for payment. Like, they said their landlord only gave them one option for payment, and it had to be a check, and it had to be written. And I was like, that's no, let's talk about this. What works for you? This is what works for
Right.
me. What works for you? So we had a conversation about that. We decided that Zelle makes sense, because I was like, I don't know, Venmo. And they were like, well, we like electronic, but Zelle makes sense. And I was like, actually, yeah, that makes way more sense. So we talked about it. It wasn't like, this is what you have to do, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
one
There's also
example.
yes, that's a great example. There's also like the old school landlord that doesn't know how to use those things, and like feels like it has to be so
Learn.
rigid and in paper. Yeah, it's time to learn. Like that is incredibly frustrating.
If you
And
own a
if
business, oh, sorry, Steph.
yeah,
I wasn't trying to talk
no,
over you. It lagged. Sorry.
no worries. True. If you're in a business, you need to get up with the times, right?
Yes. And because a lot of people could say, well, like, not everyone has access to electron. And I'm like, yes, that's totally fair. But if you own a business, and you're trying to supply housing to people, that's your duty. You have to, like, make sure that you're providing good services, and
Yes.
otherwise people won't work with you.
And figuring out how your customers want to pay, because your tenants are your customers. And if your customers are having to go out of their way every single month as a chore, like that's not fair. And that's, not everyone has the time to do that. Not everyone has the freedom to do that. Like it's just, you need to treat people with respect, and respect their lifestyle, like if someone needs to give you a paper check, that's fine. Like, or if someone needs to do, it's a difference of, maybe an hour a month, but still that's something.
Right. It's communication, really, and setting the standard up front. Like, if you, as a landlord, you need to know, like, what do I expect from them? Do I want them to, like, keep the lawn at a certain, like, they asked me questions like that, and I was like, oh wow, yeah, like, I don't know. I don't really, as long as you mow it like once a month, I guess. And like if neighbors complain, then and I find out, like then we'll have a conversation. But it's really like regulating your emotions too, right? Like you can't, if something's stressing you out, like if your reserves are low, like do not take it out on other people,
Yeah,
on your
that's a
tenants.
good rule in general. But
Right.
yes. And it really helps for things to stay unemotional if you have it in writing. So talking through these, like what does maintaining the lawn mean to both of you? It could be different things. And so I do think that that is part of being a good landlord, is really having those systems in place too. And then obviously a big portion of complaints about landlord or like being a tenant is rent raises. And sometimes that's needed, it's necessary. But like, for example, we have a long-term tenant in one of our houses. They've been amazing. They've been there for like 4 years, and I don't want them to leave. I've never raised the rent on them. I want them to stay there forever and just love the house and treat it well. And they're just like they're really communicative. They'll let us know if something's wrong, but they're not needy. So I'm like, you know what? Let's just keep it where it is. Um, and I know that there's like taxes that go up and all of that. Like I do understand that, but I think that if you have good tenants in place, it's worth it to keep them there and treat them well.
Right. And if you're going to raise the rent, give them a heads up. Do not tell them like 2 months prior. I would give them more of a heads up for sure. Like I already know for next year I'm going to raise my rent because it's so low right now. And I'm just breaking even on my mortgage payment, and my taxes are going to go up next year. So I will be, after the year I will be raising my rent. I'm going to let them know that. I mean, probably like 6 months prior or even before, because I know that I'm going to do that. So and I think this is their stepping stone to trying to buy a house. Yeah, it's just communicate with them. Don't like, you need to be organized so you don't spring things on people because this is their livelihood. Like, yeah, I can't imagine now just having not being able to like do what I want in my own house. And yeah, I know there's like renter friendly. I've been seeing a lot of TikToks where it's like why I'm like decorating my rental, or like a rental friendly like tile or whatever. Um but it's some landlords are just weird about that. When you are renting out your house, you let go of control. Like if they want to paint the walls, like it's a rental now. So I like
Yeah. That's another thing that has really helped in my mental state of being a landlord and just like um overall happiness is not being greedy and not being overly controlling. Like if they give you an extra $100 a month, is that really gonna I don't know. Is it worth it? Just asking yourself that and really being organized. And obviously you're running a business. This is a business. You're not like but I do think that people get really worked up about things and really worked up about money especially. And so like if there's something that needs to be fixed, pay someone to fix it quickly. Like this is your investment as well. And like I don't know. I feel like letting go of some money so that they have a good experience overall is going to make you happier, them happier, and your life better to just like take care of it.
yeah, that's a really great point. I Do you know, like, because I know I've said this many times, Texas is a landlord state. And
Hmm.
what's another, I guess, an example of a more of like a tenant, not tenant state. What am I trying to say? Like their
I mean,
tenants
yeah,
have more
tenant
rights,
friendly.
tenant
Yeah.
friendly. It's California, right?
California, I'm sure. I actually don't know if
Let me
someone
Google.
knows. Oh yeah, good call. Um,
Tenant friendly
because
states. So it says landlord friendly states in 2023 top are Louisiana, Alabama, South Carolina, Nevada, Arkansas, Wyoming, Arizona, West Virginia, Indiana, Florida. Texas is not on there.
well, I just looked at one. It says which state is most landlord friendly? Top
God
12
damn it.
landlord friendly states. Number one, Texas. In this
Okay.
list:
Well,
Texas, Alabama, Indiana, Colorado, Florida,
okay.
Arizona, North Carolina. So I think no, it's
Okay.
definitely, it makes sense.
Texas.
Yeah,
And
Texas
then
being
it says least landlord friendly states are Vermont, Nebraska, New York, Rhode Island, California. Like, yeah. So what does that mean? Like, what does a landlord friendly state mean?
I mean, essentially, I mean, landlord friendly is like easy to evict. Like it's hard to enforce anything like with when you're a tenant and you're like, this should be illegal. Like it's really, really hard to enforce. And if something happens in general, which is why you really want to have everything in like writing and all of this in general, if you have to if you feel like you've been wronged, you have to hire a lawyer and it's so expensive. So, more times than not, the person with the most money is the one that wins. So, so the fact that there's not very many protections in place in Texas in general means that you have to go to the courtroom, and tenants aren't going to do that. Why would they do that? You know, it's so expensive, and if they don't have a good chance of winning, they're just going to kind of like lay down, and so it just doesn't seem fair.
And these states also have less like there's not like rent control. Um I feel like in those other states, like sometimes they can have rent control, where so it's like a landlord can just raise your rent. I mean, obviously after the contract, like after your lease is over, but yeah, that's not in other states that are more tenant friendly. There's more rent control.
Like New York, there's a lot of like protections for renters, and there's rent controlled buildings, and really that's stems from it being so expensive to rent there for so long. But it's getting to that point here in Austin, at least. So I don't think it means that you should move, but it does mean that you should like know your rights, and really really read the lease. Get you know get someone that you know and trust to read the lease if you have a real estate lawyer friend, or just a real estate lawyer in general, just because if you don't know what's in there, you don't know like how, you don't know what can happen and what you need to do to fix it.
Right. And if you're listening and you have heard friends like Steph, I know you've had some people in your life who've been like, landlords are the worst. I'm interested in like what their solution is. Like what I mean, probably like tear down the system. But how are they doing that? I don't know. Like uh but also like what's like the what can they do right now that like would be ideal? Like I think yeah, if you can be a landlord in any way and you can be a good landlord, or like do you think you could be a really good landlord? Like why not try it out? Like
That's like that's the best way to do this. I just think, I mean, people need a place to live. And I will say, like, having traveled to Europe last year, having friends there, actually have a friend who bought a place in Belgium. And she was like, all of my friends think I'm crazy because no one buys anything here. And really she was like, yeah, there's just not really a culture for buying. It's not like too terribly expensive, it's just like that's not what people do. And she was like, yeah, but the government owns all of this land, all of these buildings, like someone is owning it, even if you're in the more like quote unquote socialist government in Europe. Okay, fine, people aren't buying things, but someone is owning those and you're paying someone to live there. So
yeah,
it's just an
I
interesting.
guess I could see someone being like, well, they're giving me like better health care and like sure they can
Yes.
own. It's like fine if you're going to own these things then you can like use some of that money to do good for me.
Yes,
Um
that is very fair.
which I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll have a
Yeah,
landlord if I can have all these things that I don't have access to here. Great.
quality of life upgrade, yes.
I could just
That
have
is,
quality of life that I don't have to
yeah.
like find for myself, forage for in
Yes,
the wild.
that is so true. But yeah, I feel like if you're gonna live in America, I mean, yeah, the solution is to tear down the system. The first solution, the best
Okay, let's
solution.
go. Let's do it. Let's go.
Yeah. And then the second best solution in my mind is to spread the wealth, spread the ownership, like make it so that it's not just the 1% owning so many things. And
Mhm.
that's the way that I've chosen to address it. And if that means that people need to be mean to me, I just think that it's okay.
And you have more control over when you sell your property too, who you want to sell your properties to. Like, it's and again, if you are trying to be an ethical landlord, an ethical landowner, homeowner, um when you go to sell, remember that, remember who you're selling to, and like don't be greedy then too, just that's important as well. So, and you can have control over that. You can One of our clients, oh my gosh, so I had a client back when I was wheeling and dealing, when I was also a realtor, and I had met him. I think he read a article I'd written about house hacking or something, and he lived in another state. He was probably like 25 or 26 or something at the time. Um, we talked online. He's like, I have, this is my goal. I want this. And I was like, these 3 homes, let's go look at them. And the last home I had already seen before. And I was like, I really don't like pushing people into certain things, but like this property is perfect, exactly what you're wanting. Like how to house hack. Cause he also traveled for work. So he could rent out a couple rooms. And he literally he made an offer, and it was like the quickest thing, and it's been so good. And he recently came to our community meetup, and he talked to us, and he was like, you know, I moved out, and it's kind of been sitting there because I moved to, I don't, do you remember I don't remember. He was living with a girlfriend or something. And he was like, please let me know if you have anyone in the community, like a first time buyer, and I will sell it at like a really discounted price. Just let me know. And I have a good amount of equity in this house. Like I don't need more than that. I'm willing to like do a severe discount for someone who like really needs it. And I was like, that's so nice. We need to
So
get in touch with
nice.
him. I'm
I
sure it's
know.
just still sitting there.
I know. It's so nice though. I mean, that's the way. Like he was like, I really wanted to go to someone who needs it. And that
Shout out to
is,
Mark.
yeah, yeah. And really control and like you owning property is just like an extension of yourself, of your personality, of your benevolence, of whatever you want it to be. So I feel like this overarching like hatred for property ownership and hatred for landlordship is just like it's counterproductive in our, fight for more people to own property. So anyway, I think we definitely need a different word for it because landlord sounds like we're lording
Y'all
over
tell
people.
us. Tell us
Yes.
if Give us all your suggestions on a better term for landlord, because like the lord of the land
It's
doesn't
so
sound
bad.
great.
And it's so masculine. It's so like it's just gross. So
It's such a
please.
capitalistic term.
Yes. Yes. So
uh,
I'm so glad we talked about this because we talk about it a lot in our meetings just because um we are all really wanting to do good and we want to be ethical in everything we're doing and we want our agents to be that way too. And so talking through these things as a group, as like a company is important to us. And so talking about this with y'all, our podcast listeners, it just makes sense.
and if you have a friend who feels very strongly about landlords being evil, like send this to them, and I'm interested. Like I'm always open to having conversations about this. I mean, rational conversations, not heated, angry ones, but like, yeah, like it's a good conversation to continue having with people, because I mean, don't ever go into something thinking you need to change someone's mind, but it's just good to just have these conversations, It can
Yeah.
be awkward, but like, it's good to have. It's good to have to
Yeah.
see both sides of the situation. And maybe someone has come from a long line of people who've been screwed over by landlords. And I totally get that. I totally
Yeah. Yeah. Seriously. And the fact that we get these comments and we totally get it. Like we get where they're coming from. We're not like shutting it down completely. It does we have compassion for them and we do get like it also feels really overwhelming and a lot of time fear manifests in anger. And so like the feeling of like, I'm never going to be able to do this, which a lot of people feel. I'm never going to be able to buy a house. So it's easy to make that into anger about other people buying houses, but you can. And I think that we exist to show people that it's possible. Um, and along the way, if we can, like, get one person to flip from I'm never going to be able to do it to I've actually done it,
Yeah.
our job is done.
And I totally get this is a flawed system. Like, I know a lot of this land has been stolen before, and it's true. It's a flawed system. What are little things we can do every day to make this a little bit better? Can you yeah, like, it's just, even I was I don't know. I was just like thinking about this the other day of like driving through Austin. I was like, there's oh my gosh, there's so many. I got overwhelmed. I was like, there's so many issues. There's guns and, gun violence, and like there's all oh my gosh, look at all these homeless people. And I was like getting stressed out, and then I was like, what is something I can just do right now that like I can be a better like neighbor, better person? Like, what are like I was like, I can be a better neighbor. Like, what can I do for my neighbors this week? Like, think of the things you can do every day just to be a better human to your friends, to your community, to like people you're passing by. Like, it's that does help as well. Don't
Tiny things,
mm-hmm.
like small things every day. Because it does feel like when you start thinking about it and start thinking about like what is the actual answer, and it's to overthrow capitalism, that's like a little daunting.
It does make me just want to like sell everything and go live in an island. But then I'm
Yes.
also like, but then all the other people can't do that. What are they gonna do? Like,
I know.
can we all sell our
Truly.
things or just like go live on islands, and like the people who have more money give those people some money? I was like, that's
Yes.
just would never work, because some dude would come around and just put us right back. I don't know. I'm just
Exactly.
gets overwhelming.
It's human nature. But this is kind of off topic, but the AI stuff, which is like, a big conversation right now.
Mm-hmm.
I did see something that was like, if AI can just make everybody's jobs obsolete, and then everyone can make a lot of money by not doing anything, no one has to have a job, and we just get universal basic income.
Can we fight for that? But
Yeah.
What's going to happen. It's just like
Right.
they're going to capitalize on that. But
Yes.
hopefully some other country that's not so power hungry will do that, and then we can
Yeah.
possibly
Model ourselves after that. Yeah. We can go there. Yeah. But all to say, we understand. We really do. Send this to your Gen Z friends, because that's where we're really able to make a difference. Is like,
Mm-hmm.
across ages. You can buy a house at any age, but I think that the biggest demographic of people who are, hating this process, is the younger people. And like, if we can get them on board, then we can spread it all out.
And I would say also send this to your boomer aunt or uncle who is a landlord, and you probably are like, well, they yell at me all the time, so I can't imagine what they're doing to their tenants. So like, send this to people who you're like, hey, maybe you could be a more ethical landlord.
Yes. That land on either side, we can fix this. On the landlord side for sure. Okay, be a good landlord, and hopefully we can stop the landlord hate. But if we really, the first step is rebranding it, because landlord is bad. So send us your new names for landlords.
Lord of the land. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Bye.